Hey guys, Dr. Anthony Chaffee here. Just wanted to do a quick video on cholesterol and just cover basically everything you need to know, I think, in the cholesterol debate. I was recently in another debate on the topic of cholesterol with ACNEM as well, the Australian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine, with two extraordinarily famous cardiologists on my team going against three other very well-renowned and very well-versed cardiologists and professors of medicine. So I just wanted to go over my arguments, and I'll leave everyone else to discuss their own arguments. But we only had 7 minutes, of course, like last time, so I wanted to sort of flesh out a little bit of that as well. But just for people that didn't see the debate, I'm just going to go through my side of the argument on that. Okay. So the debate was, cholesterol, have we got it wrong? Should we rethink our approach to it? And I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. Okay. So, we can argue about, which studies we trust more and which ones have more or less demerit, as we did in the debate and we do all the time as doctors and as laymen. But I think it comes down to the simple fact that the original studies that showed a correlation but never causation between cholesterol and heart disease and the 1977 USDA recommendations to eat less fat and cholesterol were not only false but fraudulent. Okay, these were bought and paid for by the sugar industry through something called the Sugar Research Foundation. That's now called the Sugar Association. Okay, so that's not up for debate. That's a matter of record. Okay, this is an actual historical event that happened that we have clear documentation of. So cholesterol was never a problem. Okay, it was never a marker of disease. It was never a cause of heart disease. Okay, that's really end of story in my book, because this was all predicated on false information. Okay, so heart disease is an inflammatory process driven by, among other things, hyperglycemia, hyperinsulinemia, peripheral insulin resistance, glycosylation and oxidation of SD-LDL and other LDL products by carbohydrates and sugar, fructose in particular. This was shown by Dr. Robert Lustig of UCSF, who, if anyone's watched my videos on sugar and so forth, I'm a big fan of his. He's done extremely good work on this subject and others. So he and the biochemistry department at UC San Francisco, published clear information about how fructose works in the body and how this causes disease. Okay, he has multiple publications since 2009 when that originally came out. So all the arguments against cholesterol are predicated on this false premise that there was a correlation between cholesterol and heart disease, which there never was. Okay, and so like anything based on a false premise, you have to throw it out and start it again. Okay, so how do we know all this? Okay, well, first of all, there's no high level evidence showing even a correlation between cholesterol and heart disease. Okay, there was never any high level evidence. Okay, more than that, the Journal of American Medical Association published a report in 2015 from the UCSF showing internal documentation from the Sugar Research Foundation talking about how there was evidence, and a ton of evidence in the literature going back to the 40s and 50s, suggesting that sugar caused heart disease. And in their own words, in their own documentation, detailing how they paid off 3 Harvard professors to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it appear as if cholesterol was causing heart disease, or is at least correlated with heart disease, and exonerating sugar, even though sugar was the problem. They call this an empty calorie. Okay, so that's where that phrase comes from. Okay, it was one of these professors, Professor Mark, who was made head of the USDA after this, and he helped shape and author the 1977 USDA dietary recommendations to significantly reduce saturated fats and cholesterol because it caused heart disease. Okay, this changed the world. All right, so in America, we actually listen. People say, people just don't listen to doctors, they just eat too much fat. No, the problem is that they did listen to doctors and they stopped eating fat. And they started eating more fruits and vegetables and sugar and grains and so forth because they're just empty calories, right? No, they actually cause a significant amount of harm. Cocaine doesn't have any calories at all. So that's just a freebie. Just do as much as you want. Obviously that's not the case. There are things besides calories that affect your body. Okay, so just in America, after the 1977 proclamation that cholesterol caused heart disease and we should stop eating that and saturated fat, the American population, hundreds of millions of people, reduced our fat and cholesterol intake by 30% and reduced red meat by 33%, because of course red meat has a lot of fat and cholesterol, so of course that's the worst, right? Well, actually it's the best. And we increased our fruits and vegetables by 30 and 40% respectively, increased grains and sugars as well. And what happened? What were the results of this? Okay, well, first of all, heart disease rates tripled, okay? And all countries that followed these dietary practices found the same results. And also obesity and heart disease, diabetes, stroke, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, all these things all increased exponentially, as well as autoimmune diseases. Okay, so all these things all increased at the exact same time. But important to this topic, heart disease rates tripled. Okay, so you can't say that cholesterol causes heart disease if you reduce cholesterol and heart disease rates increase. If anything, you say that's protective. And in fact, that's what we're actually seeing in the literature. Okay, so another piece of fraud and misrepresentation was of the Framingham study, which is a large 30 year study. This is one of the cardinal studies in cardiology. Okay, so these results actually were misrepresented by the American Heart Association, which is pretty incredible. Okay, so the original Framingham study actually found that if you dropped your total cholesterol by 1 milligram per deciliter, you actually increase your coronary mortality and total mortality by 11%. Okay, so as your cholesterol went down, your mortality rate went up, and heart disease deaths went up. Okay, that's significant. Okay, but the American Heart Association 2 years later fraudulently claimed that the Framingham study found that a 1% drop in total cholesterol equated to a 2% drop in coronary heart disease risk. Okay, that's academic malpractice. All right, that's fraud. Okay. Another very famous researcher was Ancel Keys. This guy is the guy who came up with the recommended daily allowances, and so he was quite well known. He did something called the 7 Nations study, where they found 7 nations, and as you increase the amount of cholesterol that they had in the population, you also saw this parabolic increase of heart disease as well. So they said, oh, look at that, that's conclusive. Well, no, that's a correlation, that's not a causation. And the problem with this is that he had data, full data for 23 countries, not just the 7 that he used. And if you plotted all 23 of those, there isn't even a correlation. It's scattered all over the map. So there isn't even a correlation. They've known this for 60 years now, that there's no correlation between increased cholesterol and heart disease. Okay, and it turns out that he was actually a paid shill by the sugar industry as well. He's bought and paid for. This is a matter of record. Okay, there's clear documentation of this. This goes on and on. I mean, there's obviously industrial research that goes on, and these companies have a vested interest in protecting their product and so forth. And sometimes these things are legitimate, when they're being falsely vilified. But at the same time, Coca-Cola is going around paying for research for people that say that sugary drinks don't cause weight gain. So, you have to look at where the money's coming from. And the problem with these things is that they never disclose where the money was coming from. So again, that's another piece of fraud, because these professors and academics are supposed to, or required to say where they're getting funding from, and if they have any financial interests and so forth. These guys are being paid. They need to disclose that. Okay, that's fraud to not disclose that. Okay. So, more recently, we have had studies with 140,000 patients that had heart attacks in the U.S. and showed that half of them had low LDL cholesterol. Okay, so if cholesterol is just the direct cause of heart disease, why is it that half the people that have heart attacks have low cholesterol and half have high cholesterol? Again, that's not even a correlation. Okay, there's not even like 60-40. Oh, there's a slight increase. No. It's dead even. Okay, it just not connected. Okay, there's another study that had the same sort of findings with over 100,000 people, found again 50-50 split in high and low cholesterol, and these guys still said, oh, but you need to get your cholesterol lower. And so at 3 years follow-up, the study showed that those who still had low cholesterol had 2 times the death rate of those who had higher cholesterol or high cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. Okay, so again, this is making it look like cholesterol is actually protective and it's actually good for you. And in fact, it is. Okay. This is a vital component in your body. Okay. So again, there isn't even a correlation. There was never a correlation. And in fact, there's an inverse relationship between heart disease and total mortality, infection rates, cancer rates, and LDL cholesterol. Okay. So, as Richard Feynman, the physicist, said, if it doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with the experiment, it's wrong. Okay, so we did this experiment. We played this game with hundreds of millions of people in America and now billions of people around the world, and it's wrong. Okay, heart disease rates go up if you drop cholesterol. Okay, so got to start from scratch. So starting from scratch, what really causes heart disease? Well, it's complex. There's a lot going on here, but it's an inflammatory disease process that is in part caused by sugar molecules binding to proteins on LDL cholesterol and SDLDL. These are small, dense lipoproteins. Okay, these are different characters. They respond differently in your body. Okay, and these are actually metabolites of fructose and alcohol. Okay, so if you're not eating sugar, you're not drinking alcohol, you're in much better shape anyway. Okay, so when sugar binds these things, it's called glycosylation or glycation. So the glucose molecules physically fuse and make these things act improperly or not work at all. And fructose actually has a much higher glycation rate. Okay, so again, fructose is a nasty actor in this whole process. Okay, so when they bind to this, they knock out the receptors that allow your liver to take them in. Okay, that's the ApoB100 receptor. Okay, when this gets knocked out, and there's only one, so you lose that. That's it. The only thing that can take it up are your macrophages, the scavenger receptors on your macrophages, and they just keep sucking these things up because they have an unlimited supply to unlimited capacity to take these things up, and they form these giant foam cells. Okay, there's more than that. You need damage to your arterial walls, and then these actually will invaginate into that defect. Okay, and then form an atherosclerotic plaque. Okay, so if you don't have damage to the tissue, you don't have damage to the interior lining of the vessel, it doesn't really matter what else is going on because it's not going to be able to get in there and cause a plaque. Okay, so again, this is part of a larger disease process. Okay, but again, this is a large disease process. It's not simple as cholesterol in, heart disease out. Okay, and that's the point. So high blood sugar will increase this reaction, okay? And fructose does this even more, as I said. So, this is why, diabetics have a much higher rate of heart disease, okay? Because their blood sugar is always really high. They have peripheral insulin resistance, which all plays into this, okay? So, cholesterol is involved, obviously, but, sugar and carbohydrates are the actual driving factor here in this inflammatory process. And it's only certain types of cholesterol. Again, it's really the small, dense lipoproteins that are really causing a problem. And these, again, are metabolites of fructose and alcohol, okay? Because as I mentioned in other things, as Lustig shows, fructose is metabolized into the same byproducts as alcohol is, okay? So you get the same disease processes as you do from the breakdown of alcohol as well. So polyunsaturated fats, okay, these are also a problem because we use these to replace saturated fats. They say PUFAs are much better than saturated fats. You should eat these sorts of things, okay, because they don't increase your cholesterol. But there are studies that show that when substituting polyunsaturated fats like linoleic acid for saturated fats, yes, your cholesterol goes down, but your heart disease and heart attacks go up. Okay. So these things contain high amounts of omega-6 fatty acids. Okay, so all plant oils that are completely unnatural. Okay, these aren't things that like we would have found in nature. These are things that have to be manufactured, right? They have massive amounts of omega-6s as compared to omega-3s, and that's very important. The ratio between your omega-6 and omega-3s, plays a vital role in your body. You need both, but you need omega-3s more, and so omega-6s actually use up the same enzymes that metabolize omega-3s, and so you'll actually block out your omega-3s. If you have more omega-6s, you'll actually end up using less and less omega-3s, and you'll have significant health issues from that, okay? And so they actually find that if you have omega-3s that are too low, your risk of heart disease and cardiac related deaths go way up. Okay, and omega-6s, they are very pro-inflammatory. They cause a lot of inflammation as well, and they block out the omega-3. So they're causing inflammation, and they're stopping a healthy natural process from happening as well in excess. Okay. And, as I mentioned before, cholesterol is actually good for you. Okay, there was a 68,000 person study by Ramsden and everyone et al. Published in the BMJ that found that people over 60, the higher the LDL cholesterol, the better. They lived longer. Okay, so this was protective. Okay, it also found that people with higher LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, lower rates of infection, lower rates of cancer. Okay, so there's probably a lot going on here. It's probably not just just the cholesterol involving this, but what are we doing to get low cholesterol? We're eating a lot of pro-inflammatory polyunsaturated fats, low fat, heart healthy diet, and we're doing a lot of other things that are really bad for our system. Eat a bunch of carbs and sugar and all that sort of crap, and that's bad for you. Okay, but there is that correlation. Okay, but correlation is not causation. However, we're not seeing it the other way around. We're not seeing that higher cholesterol equals bad things happening. We're seeing higher cholesterol equals good things happening. Okay. Low cholesterol is also associated with depression. This is something that I've spoken about before, but there are publications in psychiatric journals and so forth showing that you have higher rates of depression in people with lower levels of LDL cholesterol. Okay. And more frightening than that, so people that have low LDL cholesterol and depression have a much higher rate of suicide. Okay, so even psychiatrists and psychologists are now encouraging their patients to raise their LDL cholesterol. Okay, this has to turn around, guys. This is something that we really have to get more in the public sphere of understanding that we got this one very wrong. Okay, cholesterol is also a vital precursor to so many things in your body. Vitamin D for one, but also 5 hormone groups: your progestogens, your glucocorticoids, your mineralocorticoids, your androgens, your estrogens. These are vital for your health. You screw with these and you are in trouble and you will not enjoy your life. Okay, so cholesterol makes these sorts of things. People say it's like, oh, well, we make cholesterol, so this is a non-essential nutrient. Well, we do make it, but we only make about 70% of what we need. Okay, so yeah, you actually do need some of this in your body. You also make bile salts and all these sorts of things. You need cholesterol. Cholesterol makes up the membrane of every single cell in your body. I learned that in 8th grade. I remember seeing this. It's like these cholesterol molecules just are the membrane of your cells. I remember thinking but how can cholesterol be bad for you if we literally are made of cholesterol? Okay, now there are ways, I'm sure, but it didn't really make sense at the time. Okay, so what about studies? Okay, so there are a ton of studies. All the big studies post 2015 have basically shown no correlation or an inverse correlation between LDL cholesterol and heart disease. Okay, there was DeSouza et al. In 2015, the BMJ did a large meta-analysis, found that saturated fats had no association with all-cause mortality, CVD, CHD, ischemic stroke, or type 2 diabetes. Okay, no correlation. I mentioned Ramsden et al. 2016, the BMJ, he found that there was no benefit to the intervention group treating high cholesterol, and found that you had a 22% increased risk of death for every 0.78 millimoles per liter reduction in serum cholesterol. So as you reduce cholesterol, risk of death goes up. Okay? It should be the other way around if cholesterol were that bad for you. Okay? Hamley in 2017 published in the Nutrition Journal, again a meta-analysis. We have these tiers of studies. Meta-analysis are at the very top of that. Okay, they're some of the most, when well done, they're some of the best evidence. Okay, and so they look at multiple studies and correlate all the data that all these different studies look at. Okay, so you're getting a much bigger population sample. Okay. They found that replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats doesn't reduce coronary heart disease events, coronary heart disease mortality, or total mortality. Okay, and they concluded that previous meta-analysis showing the benefits of switching these two did so by including inadequately controlled trials. Okay, so they used poor evidence to come to a biased conclusion. Okay. There's something called the Women's Health Initiative. This was a large study. This is probably one of the largest studies that's ever been done. It was certainly the most expensive. It was something like $700 million. It's insane. It was hundreds and hundreds of pages long. I mean, several hundred pages long. Nothing that they talked about in their results table came to statistical significance, meaning that there were other variables and factors. And so you say like, okay, well, this shows a correlation, but you can't really trust it. Okay. If something's not statistically significant, you basically can't use it. Okay. Except one thing that they didn't report in their results. Funny enough, they seem to left this out on page 100, 600 and something. They did note that for women who had a history of coronary heart disease, if they randomized those women into the control group for a low-fat diet, that they had an increase in cardiac events by 26%. Okay, so women that previously had heart issues, if they then went on a low-fat diet, they had more cardiac events, 26% more. Okay, and that was statistically significant. That was the only finding out of a $700 million study that was statistically significant and just happened to be left out of the results. Convenient. Okay. So there was a Melaine Lopez Christensen published in the BMJ, British Medical Journal, the effects of statins on average survival. And they found that, but people on long-term statins, this is the drug to reduce cholesterol, found that for people who had previous heart issues, that this increased their life expectancy by 5 days. Not 5 years, not 5 weeks, not 5 months, 5 days. Okay, this is taking statins long-term. Okay, and these are expensive and they have side effects. Okay, so you get an extra 5 days and you have to deal with all the side effects and consequences of taking this medication. Okay, so and people who had no heart issues previously, they found a benefit of 3 days. Okay, so what are we doing here? How beneficial is this? Is it worth the side effects and the costs? I don't think so anyway. And also, if cholesterol was really the issue, if it was just cholesterol in, heart disease out, why wouldn't that be more significant? If you're reducing cholesterol, you're reducing LDL cholesterol with these medications, and cholesterol is the problem, you should find much more benefit than that. But you don't, right? It's 5 days, 3 days. Okay, so again, in Journal of American Medical Association, then subsequently published in the New England Journal of Medicine, both top publications in the world, found that increased omega-3s was associated with reduced cardiac death, reduced cardiac arrest rate at 10 times the rate. Okay, so if you have higher omega-3s, you are 10 times less likely to have cardiac events, cardiac arrest, cardiac death. Okay, that is significant. Okay, and this shows alternate factors in cardiovascular disease. Okay, so and when you change to a low cholesterol diet, low saturated fat diet, plant and seed oils and so forth, you increase the omega-6s, you reduce the omega-3s, and so you're actually going the other way. So now maybe you are in that 10 times less category, and then you increase your omega-6s and drop your omega-3s. Now you're in the 10 times more likely to get a cardiac event and arrest and die. Okay, so that's not what you want either. Okay, and again, there was that study I mentioned previously that found exactly that. When you replace saturated fats with linoleic acid, you actually reduce cholesterol, but you increase death. Okay, not good. Cardiac death specifically. Okay, so Astrup et al. In 2020, just recently, in the Journal of American College of Cardiology, published a large meta-analysis showing that saturated fats were not a cardiovascular disease risk and actually were found to be protective against stroke. Okay, so again, protective and not even correlated with heart disease. Okay, so again, they concluded that you don't need to limit your cholesterol, you don't need to limit your saturated fat and so forth, that this actually wasn't a problem and probably is providing benefit. In fact, according to their study, is providing benefit. Okay. Statins, there was a large study done in 2015 with 60,000 people over the age of 65, and they found that the people taking statins either had no benefit at all or actually did slightly worse. Okay, as far as cardiovascular events and so forth. Okay, so 60,000 people above the age of 65, and this is the most common age group to be on statins, because everyone, as they grow older, they have some heart issues, they need to be on medications and so forth to drop their cholesterol, and because they're at a higher risk of cardiac events. Okay, but they're finding that it provides either no benefit or actually detriment. And when you're talking about the side effects of statins, because they rob your cells of vitamin CoQ10, which is vitally important for energy metabolism and so forth in your cell, you actually can cause direct damage to your body, to your cells. Is why people get muscle aches and cramps and sores and they hurt. It's like, they start doing things, they get these really weird aches like they've been working out, and that's because they haven't been able to respirate properly, and so they're going over to an anabolic respiration. This happens in your heart too. This can damage your heart muscle as well. So we're giving a medication to ostensibly help your heart, and it's actually hurting your heart. Okay. So what are we doing? And it doesn't necessarily provide benefit. Okay. Okay, when you're doing a risk-benefit analysis, and you're having something, well, this causes harm, this can cause harm, and it has side effects anyway, the benefits need to far outweigh those potential side effects and so forth, okay? And it doesn't appear from the data that it does for statins, okay? And, and like everything else, this isn't, direct medical advice. Is just general advice. Okay, I'm not telling anyone how to change your prescriptions or anything like that. I'm just letting you know what the studies are showing. Okay. Ravenscoff et al. Again in the BMJ did a large literature review covering 68,000 people. Found an inverse association with all-cause mortality and LDL cholesterol. Or no association. So no association or an inverse association. Okay. And then, also the same thing, inverse association or no association with cardiovascular mortality and LDL cholesterol. Okay. And they found and concluded, that higher LDL cholesterol equated to longer lifespan in the elderly. Okay. And so why are we giving them statins to reduce their cholesterol when we have large studies with 70,000 people showing that in the elderly populations, more cholesterol is good? Okay, your body's made out of cholesterol, your brain's made out of cholesterol, your hormones are made out of cholesterol, vitamin D is made out of cholesterol. These are all very important things, and cholesterol is part of that. Okay, so Ravenscoff et al. Also did another literature review and critique of 3 papers that argued for the cholesterol hypothesis, and he concluded that the cholesterol hypothesis is unable to satisfy the Bradford-Hill criteria for causation, and it is. It's all correlation. It's nothing causative that they can show. And that the conclusions of these 3 authors, were, when reviewed, were based on misleading statistics, exclusion of unsuccessful trials, and ignoring numerous contradictory observations. Right. So this is cherry picking and fraud. Okay, and that's generally what you see in the whole cholesterol hypothesis. Is that's what a lot of these studies are. They're fraud. Okay, they're bad studies. So he found again that there's no association with total cholesterol and degree of atherosclerosis. Okay, and no exposure response relationship between total cholesterol and atherosclerosis. Okay, total cholesterol and the total cholesterol causing cardiovascular disease was based on fraud, and he goes into talking about the Framingham study and so forth, and the misrepresentation of that as well. So in conclusion, I think yes, we need to reconsider cholesterol, right? Cholesterol was never the problem. Okay, this was a false flag. They just threw this up there to try to throw the heat off of sugar. Okay, so this should never have even been considered an issue in the first place. Okay, we have real world evidence with hundreds of millions of people, billions of people around the world showing this. You reduce cholesterol, heart disease goes up, okay? And we have many, many studies with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people showing this as well, okay? Cholesterol is also vitally important. We make it, we don't make as much as we need. We need to get some from our diet as well, okay? As I discussed, hormonally and so forth, this is what our body's made of. This is how our body works properly, okay? So I think it is time to change our approach and start to encourage saturated fat and cholesterol, and to discourage sugar and carbohydrates, which are part, again, of this disease process, this inflammatory process. Obviously, smoking and different sorts of chemical substances and drugs and so forth can also contribute to this. But sugar and carbohydrates drive this to a large degree, and I think that the evidence suggests that the large spike in heart disease rates over the past century, certainly, but significant, but really in the last 40 years, comes directly from our increased consumption of sugar and carbohydrates. We were smoking probably more than we do now. Historically, we didn't have the heart disease rates that we do now. Okay, so I think that the cholesterol and the sugar are really the main culprits here, because we increased these dramatically, and actually, cholesterol went down, smoking went down, and so forth. Heart disease rates tripled. Okay. All right, guys, I hope you liked that, and I hope that that was clear to everyone. Any questions about that, let me know. This is a topic that I think it just comes up all the time. Everyone asks me, what's your cholesterol? What's your cholesterol? What's your cholesterol? And what I tell them is my cholesterol is physiological. It's what it's supposed to be, because I'm eating what I'm supposed to be eating. I'm eating for a physiological diet for my species, a species appropriate, species specific diet. And so whatever my cholesterol is, it's supposed to be there. And again, cholesterol was never the problem. Okay, so it is not a problem for me. I don't eat carbohydrates. I don't eat sugar. I don't drink alcohol. Maybe once a year, once every 2 years, something like that. Certainly not enough to kick off heart disease. Okay, so I'm not worried about my cholesterol. I'm actually, happy with whatever it wants to be. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks again. Just leave your comments and let me know what you think and what to make better in the future. Thanks a lot. Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.